Hey everyone, it's Andrew Nagel of Alkanine Designs, and we're back for the final part of the detailing on this pendant. There's still going to be a couple of more parts of this tutorial as a whole, but we're getting to the tail end here. So this is where we've left off the piece, and this tutorial isn't going to take too long. We're just going to be building a quick bail out of some 2x1 mm rectangular wire. So I've got my length of 2x1 rectangular wire, and I am forming that into just a quick oval shape. I'm not going too complex with this bail. I just wanted something that was sturdy and something that would hold the piece and something that wouldn't wear too thin over time. This is pretty thick material, and so you just want to make sure when you bend this together that your tips are very flush. And so just checking it out to see how it looks on the piece. I think I'm going to cut out a section and just bring this down a little bit more. It was just a little too large for the overall design. It was a little distracting. And so now that I've cut that down, I'm going to bring those tips together again. And as you can see there, the tips have to be flush together. They must be touching for the next part, which is going to be soldering this together. So that way we've got a nice stable piece of metal for the top part of our bail. So now we're over at the honeycomb ceramic blocks. We're going to apply some flux to our piece there. Then I'm going to apply some heat. Once this piece starts heating through, you'll see the flux bubble up and the piece start to get a little hot. I'm going to add some solder and then continue heating until the solder flows through. If you haven't checked out my soldering tutorials, I highly suggest that you do. It gives more of a detailed walkthrough and shows you all of the tools you need to go through this process. And so there's the attached bail. And now I'm going to polish this down. It's got to sit in the pickle pot for a bit, but then I've used my rotary tool, my flex shaft, to polish this up. If you haven't seen my polishing tutorials, I highly suggest you check that out as well. I just didn't want to make this tutorial too long and show you all the whole process there. You'll be seeing a polishing tutorial next as well, where we do the back and then also polish the back plate for this pendant. So it looks like it sits nicely, and it fits on the bail pretty well, or on that top swoop pretty well. And so now we're ready to attach it. Once it's sitting where you want it to sit, you're ready to bring your wires back and to find an attachment point on the back. Once you've found a nice little attachment point, you can attach the tip of your swoop back to your frame or to another wire, wherever is most convenient for you, so long as the piece continues to lay flat. That's our biggest part here, is we want this pendant to lay flat when we set it down on the desk, because we're going to add the back plate and it needs to be sitting flat against the back plate metal. And so now I'm just connecting the length of 21 gauge square that has been extruding from one of the inner swirls on our design. We're going to then turn that tip in and wrap it around the bottom point, so that way it can attach down to this wire and become super stable. And this is a totally fine attachment point here for the end of this wire, so long as you have your tips turned in and you make this nice and flush around that section of half round wire. Going to turn our tips in and tighten that down. But I also decided that I felt like I needed one more line here to kind of even this out and add a bit more just kind of weight to that side. It looked a little thin on that top part. And so I'm adding a length of 20 gauge square through that little triangular weave pattern we did at the top of the opal. This is feeding through and then wrapping around the back, and I'm going to connect it to one of my other wire attachments here. Once you've connected your points, you're ready to swoop your wire around and to make a little swirl. I always like to think about which way I need to swoop my wire before I do it, and so I'm just going to go ahead and make a little swirl there. I've been doing this for a while, especially with these swirls, and so I've really gotten down like the flow of swooping the wire. Do be gentle when you're doing this, but again, a natural swirl always looks better than a forced swirl or a forced line, so remember to keep your lines and your swirls as natural as possible. And then I'm just going to move that bail down a little bit, clip off my extra, and then I'm going to continue to wrap around this end. I'm going to wrap this end around the same length of half round wire that we just wrapped our other end of 21 gauge square to. And so it's going to be the same connection point. They're going to kind of interweave together and wrap into each other. So now that we've gotten our connection point done, I'm going to use my nylon coated pliers to crimp down that swirl just so that way it's stable against the design. It's starting to look pretty good. The bail is, it's on there and it's not really going anywhere. The pendant feels stable. So you're going to have to go by feel and make sure that everything is secure and whatnot. It sits very flat. You want to make sure it's a thick enough bail that it's going to hold a chain and also doesn't harm the metal or anything like that, or it's not too thin that the metal wears out after a while so you don't have to replace it in the future and stuff. And so yes, for the next part of this tutorial, we're going to be doing the back plate. It's going to be a bit more of an expansive part, so it might even be 2 parts in and of itself, just shaping the back plate and then polishing and finishing off the pendant. So thank you all so much. I hope you had a great weekend, and go out there and hopefully enjoy yourselves.